so that it's not garbled. Now, where do you get this stuff? Really, nation states have the same challenge that we do in trying to secure our home networks. Do you just rely on the little icon in the system tray, and if you see that, you feel like you're secure? Or do you actually need to download Snort and understand how to write a rule in Snort and be able to bring up Snort output and analyze the traffic? So it's really the same issue for governments that they struggle with, whether or not they can rely on a company and the company's download of updates over time, or do they need to build their own cadre of experts? By way of example, Burma, Belarus, Zimbabwe, and Cuba have all bought systems from China. There is a corporate connection to talk about, and it's often the target of the privacy advocates' wrath. However, the industry has a great comeback. They say, wait, our product is politically neutral. You can do whatever you want with it. Chains, whips, anything that can be manufactured. Essentially, it can be used for something good, something bad, or anywhere in between. Now, for these companies, customization is very important because you're dealing with foreign countries, foreign cultures, foreign languages, different mindsets, and so they have to have an ability to deal with foreigners. Default categories tend to be out of the box, say pornography and gambling. It'll be loaded with words to find this type of traffic and to deny it. Here's one example of a free tool from Scandinavia that you can download and use, and it's according to its website, it's built for a grade school, a grammar school, and so it goes from unobstructive to draconian, but again, from all the way from IP down to algorithm matching for anything you like, down to whitelist and stealth mode. So stealth mode, you allow somebody access to a forbidden site, but then you alert, the administrators / law enforcement. So final slide in this section is, that governments have a wide array of tools at their disposal to track you, to deny traffic to you, and to manipulate traffic that's coming to you. So you can blacklist IPs. And then in government, if you own the top-level domain, you own the DNS, essentially you own the dictionary for the country. So one colorful episode in 1984 is whether the government can successfully tell its people that 2 + 2 = 5, such that they'll believe them. So, but if you own the dictionary, of course, one analogy would be, let's say they wanted to visit, AmnestyInternational.org. You can essentially modify the mirror, bring it into your intranet space, change the content, and allow the person to visit that site. So that's one thing that is available to you when you own the whole space. So the last thing is just, would also be a website that is created only as bait to attract, in some cases criminals, in some cases political adversaries. So the next section of the presentation is really the snapshots of the governments that are out there that we can look at. So I kind of came up with a top 10 list, and we'll go down from 10 all the way down to 1. But these are some of the groups whose information I looked at. And some of it's just a knowledge of certain limited knowledge of foreign affairs and international relations and current events, subjective analysis. But I also relied on groups like this. This is pretty simplistic. So Freedom House, they're dividing the world into essentially 3 groups: free, partially free, and not free. And I won't mention which is which, but all of the countries that we're going to look at in this presentation fall within one of those colors. Reporters Without Borders, they have every nation state in the world sort of racked and stacked according to freedom of the press. So you start in Scandinavia, as you can imagine. But also noteworthy is Eastern Europe. So some of those countries are really focusing hard on integrity in getting the legal things right, in impressing the EU, impressing the United States. And so you can see some of those countries on here. So who would guess that Slovakia is number 8, right? Now we're going to be down at the bottom of the list. So most of these countries are going to be the countries that we're looking at. But I'll move on so I don't give them all away. Number 10 is Zimbabwe. Now, Zimbabwe, as I mentioned, has gone seriously downhill over the past 15 years. That's Robert Mugabe, who is still in power in the country. I found this posting on the internet. October 20, 2006, he met with his version of the CIA and essentially gave them directions. He said, look, these people in our country, they're sending out bad information. They're making us look bad in the world. I need for you to infiltrate the ISPs monitor their communications, and find these people who are sending out negative information. There are some cyber cafes there, as you can imagine, in Africa, and get in there as attendants, as surfers. You're going to need some computer training, but it needs you to find these people. Another strategy on their part is essentially route everything through one telecommunications firm. So there's a couple of countries like this that had some state and some private firms. Essentially in Zimbabwe, they're trying to route everything through sort of legal and other types of intimidation. They're trying to route all the traffic through the pro-government telecommunications firm. Now, essentially, it accomplishes two things. One, you get visibility on all the traffic. But then two, the profits are all going to come into government coffers more so than they would otherwise. So they've set up the interception of communications bill, and essentially they're requiring, as in Russia, this was big in the news a few years ago, a system called SORM, right? And essentially they went out to the telecommunications firms and the ISPs and they said, doesn't matter, you're going to allow our internal security to come in and plug in this box. So sit down, shut up, and plug it in, and we're going to be able to bring it back. So no court challenges and really significant expenses. They sort of put the burden of the cost on the ISPs. We'll just look at a defacement for each country as we go through. If there is one that's at the political level, at the government level, here's a Brazilian evangelical group that defaces websites, Command Tribulation, that got a Zimbabwe page. Number 9 is Iran. Pretty fascinating because Iran is, I guess the first thing is that phenomenal growth of the internet, just unbelievable. You have to imagine, if you're the government, what this may look like to you. But over the course of about 10 years, it's going to go for next to no connections to the internet, almost to everybody being connected to the internet. So, 10 years in the big scope of things is a blink of an eye. So you're going to have everybody being able to connect in some form or fashion to the internet. So what they've decided in Iran basically is to block things they don't like. And they use Islam as a guide, at least that's the way they explain it. So Muslim values are emphasized, especially if it's in Farsi, so the native language. But typically you won't be able to find porn, anonymizers, and a lot of stuff on politics have been cut out. Blogging is huge in Iran. They're very computer savvy in the country. And although they try to have a lot of rules and regulations on journalists and news media, the web is still the most trusted source by far, and people are excited about reading news on the web. And indeed, even legislators have gone onto the web to be openly critical of their own government. So that's pretty positive and sort of puts them at number 9, at the high end of our numbers. And then the users are net savvy. There have been websites that have been shut down, and they're quickly mirrored both internally and externally. And so people can still access the content in other ways. One of the system administrators, as soon as he received the government blacklist for the week, he posted it on the web. He's so angry with it. Like I said, blogging is huge. They've even accused the CIA of using the blogs to undermine the government. There's been one death threat against an Iranian blogger. And here is the president's blog. So this is pretty cool. He's got a message to the American people. He's got a question here, so you can vote on whether or not you think the current structure and mandate of the United Nations is correct. In other words, is it good that only some powerful countries and winners of the Second World War have the veto right at the UN, right? Then he's got a couple letters there, one from the United States and one from England. So this is a Turkish defacement of an Iranian site and using a Native American theme. So I just think that is pretty cool. Number 8, Saudi Arabia. So just across the Persian Gulf. In Saudi Arabia, the goal is to have a moral internet. And this is really interesting. They have something called the King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology. And it's a national level proxy. And although they've got a bunch of ISPs in the country, everything runs through here. And the goal of this outfit is to eliminate the negative aspects of the web. So they use caching. So a lot of the sites, if you're in Saudi Arabia and you visit a site, you're not going to be actually going to the site, but you're going to be viewing a cache that is kept at KACST. Now, you're going to get pop-ups if you go to a site that is in the area of triage. And so they say they have the caching, the blacklisting for certain sites. And then if you're trying to go to a site that nobody's ever been to before, there's some triage there in which an automated or artificial intelligence program will try and make some determination. If it's determined to be forbidden, then you'll get a pop-up that says it's disallowed and your request has been logged by the ISP. The censor mix in Saudi Arabia, they say it's mainly all about morality and not about politics. But a couple of things that have been noticed are, and this is sort of reminiscent of the 1984 novel, unofficial histories are not allowed in the country. And one really thing I liked was that they have blacklist removal and addition forms. So they say they get about 500 of these a day. Now, so if, let's say you're a Saudi surfer and you're trying to get access to information, it's not allowing you to. You can go to a page and fill it out and say, hey, this is legitimate information. I'm a researcher, I'm a student, I need this information, and it's being blocked. So please unblock it. Now, they say they get about 500 both removal and addition forms every day. And I don't know what the general breakdown would be. I guess far fewer addition forms. But they say no politics, but there's a really interesting case of this London-based opposition group named Mira. And for years, they have been playing a game of hide-and-seek on the internet. First, it was, a new URL. Then they were port hopping. Then it was, posting information on a new site that would be emailed out, to the readers. And eventually, as I understand it, the government gave up on this group, and they're just allowing the information into the country. So Saudi officials have said, look, this is really difficult to stay on top of. But in particular, in the area of pornography, they say they're not going to give up, and they feel like they have been extremely successful. And one of the things about Saudi Arabia, as we'll see in Cuba in a few minutes, is a very educated citizenry. So the government is actually dealing with very smart, savvy, well-educated people, and it makes it relatively more difficult. In Saudi Arabia, you've got a lot of people who are buying satellites, and so what they're doing is they're just going straight to foreign ISPs and skipping their own ISPs altogether. So here's a defacement from a Saudi and Pakistani associated hacker. Number 7 is Eritrea. And this is an example of a country that obviously less tech-heavy. When I was in Eastern Africa, it's interesting. You go into little villages, and they don't really have a cinema per se, but somebody in the town will have a VCR and a television and charge about a nickel. And the whole, that village and the other villages around, they will all go to that house, and everybody pays a nickel, and they all watch movies. So in Eritrea, a lot of walk-in ISPs, because few people are wealthy enough to afford a computer and internet connection. It was the last country to go online, but they do have a very strong tradition of song and oral histories and stories and so on and so forth that's gradually migrating from the radio to the internet. Let's see, in the year 2000, when they finally connected to the net, 4 ISPs for the whole country, they shared 500 kilobits per second. So you can imagine how long it would take to download one web page. Let's see, so initially, 2000, you could get most opposition websites, although the country was quickly, even though it had been the last online, was really the first country in Africa offline. Since 2001, human rights have been spiraling downhill. No reporters, no NGOs. By 2004, all cyber cafes had been moved to official government educational and research centers. They said it was due to widespread viewing of pornography, but of course diplomats very skeptical of that. Typically today, politics discussed well outside Eritrea. Number 6. Belarus. Very interesting case study because it is a lot of infrastructure there to work with and a lot of educated people, especially in the tech sciences, to deal with. Belarus is a funny country and is very